Hello and welcome to this episode of Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kizma. This is episode 58 and today's topic is learning to let go.
Welcome to the Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kizma, bringing you ancient wisdom for modern day success so that you can sparkle just a little bit brighter each and every day. If what you hear speaks to your soul, go ahead and give us a rating and a review in iTunes. You can also find us on SoundCloud and Stitcher. And hey, if there's somebody in your life that you think would enjoy this podcast, go ahead and share it with them.
Well, hello, Kizma.
Hello.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. We're recording this on New Year's Day.
We are, yeah.
We're working New Year's Day, everyone.
How was your week?
My week was fascinating because I just arrived back into this country. In fact, before we sat down to record, I was trying to figure out what day did I land? It's Sunday now. What day did I get back here to the US of A?
Tuesday.
Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Tuesday night. Okay. So that means Wednesday was a blur, but I did my best to decompress. Thursday, Friday, like some clients and creating, and Saturday, yeah, it's been a lot. I did a webinar today, which I'll do a little plug for the Science of Spirituality. It's still kicking, guys. If you have not joined, check the link in the show notes. It's awesome.
Have you noticed, this is something that I noticed, but I'm curious about you. Have you noticed that the energy tools have been helpful for your transition back?
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Yeah, me too. I noticed because we didn't really have that the last time I made a trip to India, which has been way too long. Mm-hmm. And then coming back and kind of getting back into the groove, man, in going there too,
right.
And being able to transition a little bit easier, man, I was super grateful for those tools.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So it's been good that and developing the intellect, which we'll be talking about a lot.
Developing the intellect.
So this is a continuation of our series about our trip to India.
Right.
It was...
we'll be talking about this forever, I have a feeling.
Yeah. I mean, it'll definitely be continuing through, but this specific trip was pretty mind-blowing, and we learned... there was some really key pieces that we got... I can speak for myself. I got more clarity on that we wanted to bring into the podcast and share with all of you.
Yeah.
And to bring that into some specific topics so that, it can kind of fill some of the gaps. Because what I've found a lot of times is that people who are interested in spirituality, it's like a lot of times you just kind of like you reject some of the old stuff and then end up kind of like figuring it out on your own, which is challenging and leaves you with a lot of questions and things like that.
A lot of holes, a lot of questions.
Right. Or... you've just been around the spiritual community a lot and you've learned some kind of weird things that just don't really, necessarily jive with your thought and reason and logical understanding of like how a human being functions in the world.
Or you've been just doing a lot of different mystical tarot readings, healings, and there's just a lot of open loops that are actually draining your energy.
Oh, good one. Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
So our goal with this series is to bring the Vedanta philosophy into the podcast, which we've always been doing anyway, but to do it in a little bit more clear way, to lay a really firm foundation, because this philosophy is ultimately, the underlying foundation of all the different spiritual practices and religions in the world in some way, shape, or form. Like it all sprang from this. And today's topic is about letting go.
Letting go.
So I think to kind of look at why would we bother talking about this? Kizma, can you talk a little bit about why this is important?
Well, let's look at when you don't let go, right, everyone? So think about when you are forcing something, when you want something to be a certain way, when you're holding on, or when the mind is like just going in all these different directions, trying to get, and have, had, and hold. It's exhausting. It's completely depleting, and it goes against one of the true teachings of success, which is single-pointed focus.
Right. Yeah. So what you're really talking about is like attachment to all these different things.
These different things or people or places. But really, it's like I look at it as attachment to a perception. People really get caught up and confused and agitated when what they think should be is not. And sadly, because of that, they miss out on some real magic and miracles around them. Like it's just this tunnel vision of it's going to be this way. And then when it's not that way, there's extreme disappointment, but then you can't see beyond it.
Wow. That's kind of interesting that you bring it into like manifesting in the world, where, it's so easy to get attached to how you think it's supposed to show up.
How you think it's supposed to show up. And oftentimes, everyone, life is not what you think it's going to be. And if you can be flexible with that, you win. I
sometimes wonder why I spend time planning. Because it seems like as soon as I take action, the whole plan changes anyway. Or it shows up, when I set a manifestation in motion, it shows up in some unique way that I would have never imagined. It's like, well, why did I even bother planning?
Exactly.
But that's not to say that planning is without value.
You have to plan. Yeah. I mean, the analytical mind needs organization, right? And the human needs organization. The human needs structure. But the real sparkle and the magic is when you have this structure, when you have the organizational skills, but then you're super receptive above that. It's like you transcend it. You've got this strong foundation, then you transcend it all. But back to why we want to let go. The other thing I can think of is when people dig their heels in, like maybe a relationship has ended, but they can't let go of that human. It's like severe attachment. That is so devastating on so many levels. I mean, not just emotionally, but physically. They're doing more and more research. I don't know if it was one of the sad things this week is Carrie Fisher died and then Debbie Reynolds died. Talk about intuition. The day after Carrie died, I remember I was just driving. I was like, so I wonder when Debbie's going to pass. And then she died the next day, which just weird. But they did reports on Debbie and there's something called a broken heart, right? So the heart will mimic kind of like a cardiac moment by having stress on the muscles. There's an increase in cortisol and these hormones that are not good for you. So the whole body has a physical reaction that can be very depleting. This is why when people go through grieving processes and they're not processing the grief, they take a hit physically. This is why some people get sick. So the same thing when you're hanging on to relationships, something that had to do with love, it's going to affect your heart.
Right.
Not to mention the energetic heart chakra, not to mention your sacral chakra, not to mention all of your chakra system.
Yeah, when one goes out so often,
everything's going out.
So many go sideways. And it's not just relationships that have passed.
No.
But relationships also that you remain in that are no longer serving,
right?
That are really out of alignment,
right?
Letting go of those sorts of things too. I like how you put it of a perception, right? It's like we have this idea of the way that things are supposed to be or the way that people are supposed to be,
right?
And it causes so much agitation, and what we wind up with is just feeling stuck.
Right.
And also just not really, like you said, seeing the magic and the possibilities that are there.
Closed tunnel vision through agitation and stuckness.
Yeah. And that's just no good. So letting go is super necessary for that. But I want to turn it back to manifestation as well. And a really interesting quote that they come back to time and time again at the Academy, which is, the way to gain anything is to lose it.
Oh, repeat that.
The way to gain anything is to lose it.
I think that's all we need in the show notes. That's it.
Swami Ramatirtha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Really? Yeah. And it's very interesting because it speaks directly to this topic. We talk about the art of letting go or learning to let go. And that is in the spiritual development, spiritual practices, that's renunciation.
Right. Right.
So, but that has a really practical application in our everyday lives as far as just manifesting results in your life. You're in a human form and there are things that you're here to do, and using your action in a positive and productive way, both spiritually for your own self-development and then externally to create something beautiful in the world, right? So karma yoga becomes the practice of converting your action into devotion.
Yeah.
And to that end, we have goals in mind.
We have goals, we have ideals.
And when you think about really going for that goal, I'm sure that you've heard somebody say, man, you have to let go of the result. But it's so hard because you want it so bad. I mean, I'm sure you experience this in your career as a flute player, right? If you want to, win a job, or when you're really attached to the outcome of something, how much anxiety that creates, which actually undermines your action and the clarity and power of your action to actually get that result. So
this is true. Now here, I just need to pause because here's a little bit of the conundrum. And in fact, when I was hanging out with Zoe, it was so fun to be with Zoe, my daughter, in Florence and Casablanca. We were actually having a conversation about Hillary Clinton and how I remember seeing on the news that morning where someone said, hey, congratulations, you're going to be the first woman president. And she's like, thank you. She saw it as done. Her team saw it as finished. And it didn't happen that way for her. So it's devastating. And Zoe had such a great question. She's like, well, isn't that what that book you gave me, The Game of Life, teaches, is that you're supposed to see it and believe it, like the manifesting.
Really interesting point.
Right? And so this is the thing, everyone, let's really look at this carefully. We're saying on one hand, when something is forced, it's never forceful. When you want something, you've got to let it go. On the other hand, that we teach a lot of co-creation, of manifestation, and you want to command your manifestation. You want to see it. You want to visualize it. So what is that fine line in between?
Tell me, what is that fine line? I kind of want to know myself.
Well, I think like anything, even, for those of you that have done my manifestation classes, that we go through this process, and the last piece is you let it go. You really do let it go. So it's as if it's embodied in your system, in your field, in your belief. You've seen it, and then you let it go. And this is true for those of you that visualize. You can spend time really visualizing what it is you desire to manifest, but then you let go of that attachment, and you're in the world in peaceful action, right? That action that is towards your goal. Now, I remember Swami Parthasarathy just giving me a teaching personally. I mean, it must have been 8 years ago. And he's like, look, you set your ideal, you forget about it, but you do all the work to get there.
Yeah, that's the tricky thing. That's the trickiest thing in our lives.
Perfect.
Like, how can I achieve a goal if I don't think about the goal?
It's set.
Right?
It's set in motion. So we think of it, that goal, that ideal is set in motion. You've pinged it. You've pinned it. It's there. You have conviction around it. You're going to take the action, but arriving or getting that goal does not determine your happiness. Of course, you're going to be excited if you get it, right? Of course, there's a celebration. But your overall state of being is not affected by getting or not getting that goal.
Yeah, that's the renunciation piece.
Ooh, good luck, everyone.
This is one of the places where I've found in my life personally, just having coaches and mentors along this path are so incredibly valuable.
If they get it.
Well, yeah, they need to understand that piece, but to help to keep your mind out of that constant wanting and driving. And because, yeah, that's true. Because actually some people actually do the exact opposite, that they continue to inflame that.
Right.
And then you create more and more anxiety to get the result. Yeah. And it just doesn't really serve the end result, even though it seems like you're doing all the right things.
Exactly.
So really, really tricky. Yeah. So the way to gain anything is to lose it.
Now, I just want to insert here, renunciation is not giving up all of your worldly possessions and going into a cave to hide.
Right.
This is a misconception I talked about on the webinar today. It's a misconception. You don't throw it all away and leave the world. You're placed here for a reason. You have something to do. You have possibly a family or friends or a job or a business. So giving it up and hiding in a cave is pretty much quitting. There's few people on the planet that are meant to meditate for hours in a cave.
Yeah, that's running away from things. And that brings up another side of this, where it's like where you give things up, like you're going to let something go because you see that it will do harm to you because you're afraid of what will happen.
Yeah.
And that's actually called Rajasic renunciation, but basically it's an agitated renunciation that says like,
oh, it's too much trouble.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that because if I do that, bad things are going to happen, yet you still hold the desire for it. So it doesn't really...
What's an example of that?
If you can give up alcohol, this is, I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to go for it. I think Alcoholics Anonymous is amazing. But every time somebody steps into that place and identifies themselves as an alcoholic, it continues to create that loop of, basically identifying that I'm an alcoholic. And so what happens is you're an alcoholic who just happens to not drink. And so you give it up because
the subconscious again and again.
Exactly. So you I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way, but I'm just
because we've seen miracles from some of our friends that have gone to
and
AA.
I really do think it has its place and everything like that. But if you're going to talk about spiritual truth, then the actual truth of that is that it continues to embed that belief and identification as an alcoholic. And so you stop drinking because, it destroys your body and your life. But you still hold that craving to drink. You just simply choose not to, which is definitely a step up. Right. But that desire itself hasn't been extinguished. And so it just continues to filter through your life. And if you're going to take it into the next experience, truthfully speaking, that is something that will go with you because it's a desire that hasn't been fulfilled, or, fulfilled or extinguished, right? So real challenge along those lines. I don't know if that makes sense. It's like, it could be that, it could be, giving up junk food, just because you're afraid of what it's going to do to you. Right. There's a difference between that and actual renunciation. So,
oh yeah. It's like years ago when I had a little heart thing going on, I gave up coffee.
Right.
It's like,
I don't know how you did that, but.
Well, I was like, either you're going to have heart surgery or you stop drinking caffeine. I'm like, okay, that's easy. But that was kind of Rajasic renunciation. It was forced renunciation.
It was forced renunciation.
I did not choose on my own to give up caffeine. I was given an ultimatum.
Yeah. Did you still have a desire or craving for it?
I kind of just I just replaced it because the higher. So this will help everyone out there when we're talking about renunciation. It's like you replace it for a higher something. So my higher ideal was to be very healthy.
Right. Okay.
And my higher ideal was not to have open heart surgery. That was a pretty easy replacement.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's what we're really talking about here. When you talk about learning to let go, you can't just let go of something.
Yeah.
Right.
It'd be so cool if we could, people.
What'll happen is it will create a void in your mind, and then your mind will go to fill that up with something else. So that's where you find the really common practice or the really common result that when you let one thing go, something else comes in to take its place.
I quit smoking, I start eating, or...
Right, I quit doing drugs. I started watching a ton of TV, right? I still had that desire to check out in some way, shape, or form. But, I decided to do something that was less destructive, arguably, and then took it up with something else. So that's what happens. And then you wind up going from thing to thing to thing and just wondering like, wow, I'm still going through these same cycles of attachment, of
appearing
agitation.
as an addictive personality, so to speak, or leaving one relationship and going to another that's kind of the very same, with a different body and face.
It's false renunciation. So when we talk about this in the spiritual practice, it's really about, what is true renunciation and how do you really let go? And if you can't just let go of something without the mind kind of stepping in and filling that space, whether it happens instantly or whether it happens over time, the mind will fill that space unless you grab up something higher.
Yes.
So Kisma spoke to this directly where she's like, okay, I now have a greater value for not having heart surgery, which is still Rajasic, by the way. But I have a greater value for not having heart surgery than I do for
drinking coffee.
So I grab onto that higher ideal of physical health, and the lower gradually can drop away.
Right.
Right. So it really comes down to where you place your value.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is then we have like all of these like different desires, like all these different things. So you have a desire for health, but you also have a desire for tacos, like and junk food or whatever that
cake.
is. Chocolate cake, You have a desire for more consistent energy throughout the day, yet you also have a desire for those nice little bumps that you get from the caffeine or from the coffee, right? You have a desire for a really close and loving relationship, but you also have a desire for independence and freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are conflicting desires that pull in opposite directions, and you wind up somewhere out in no man's land. So somewhere in between all of those, struggling. This is where the whole conversation about, how do I have more balance in my life comes from. Right? Interesting, because you're like, I want this, but I want that. And then all these things seem kind of disconnected.
Right.
And also in conflict with one another. And it's like, well, I want balance. And that turns out to be actually a lie all in and of itself, is just an illusion of how do we create this balance. Because the middle path is not really what you think it is. We're going to do a whole episode on the middle path. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But for right now, we're talking about renunciation. And that has more to do with really placing your value on the right things in your life.
Exactly.
So
how does one do that?
Well, there's a practice to it, because it's basically like a sales process.
Please do tell.
You got to really enroll yourself.
It's an enrollment of your own self.
Yeah, you have to enroll yourself in the higher value.
Mm-hmm.
So it's New Year's Day.
Mm-hmm.
We're walking down the 101 along Carlsbad Beach, and there's a lot of people out and a lot of people taking the afternoon run.
Yeah.
Way more than you'd ever see on
Right.
a Sunday afternoon. And it's like, okay, I see you. Like I see your New Year's resolutions.
Well, that's awesome. Go
I think
for
it's
it.
awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool. However, right, if you haven't really enrolled yourself fully into that health, like a healthy lifestyle for the new year, eventually it will get hard and you'll unenroll yourself from it.
Right, because it'll be something that's a dislike.
Yeah, it won't
doesn't
stick.
feel good right away.
Yeah, it won't stick.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about really pitching up higher values, it's a continual process of enrollment into the higher value.
Right.
Like if you're not going to just make a decision one day and say like, I'm going to be healthy today. Right. And so for the past 20 years, you've been eating junk food and not exercising and doing all sorts of other things, which really aren't great for your body. And then one day you're just going to decide, I'm going to be healthy today.
But doesn't it happen like that sometimes, where people just, I don't know if any of you out there have reached a point where like, you're just done. You're tired of being overweight or tired or not being able to sleep. And you're just like, I'm changing this around.
Well, I would argue that those people have been through cycles of deciding and then not deciding, or it's been that conversation's been going on for a while, or something really tragic and shocking just happened that said like, whoa, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like that happened to me in my life, like, which was basically just, I just woke up and realized what I was doing to myself. And I didn't know where I was going, but I definitely knew that I couldn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
So I kind of sat in that void for a while of just like, okay, well, I dropped all that stuff. And that's where I really started to notice that, okay, I dropped some of the overtly destructive things, but gradually over time, over the period of several months, these other things started to creep in. And that's where I started to really understand that, oh, like you can't just leave a void like that in your mind, because an active mind will take that over and fill it up.
It will.
And what I hadn't done was really enroll myself in the higher values.
Sometimes it's tricky to do if a person doesn't understand what the higher values or teachings can actually do for their life. So again, there's the whole thing too of people walk their karma, people come in with certain desires and they're fulfilling those desires and satiating, and other desires pop up. So it's a little bit of like, how many times you have to go around this experience before you get to the place of, I really want a higher life.
Yeah, I would just want to be done with this.
Yeah.
And that's everybody's individual path.
Yeah.
I can only speak for myself. and my ways, in my opinion, is no better or worse than anybody else's. It's just my way.
Yeah.
And your way is your way. We're very, very different humans.
Mm-hmm. This is true.
This is true.
So, but just to for our listeners, for you guys listening, there's a natural progression of renunciation. So when a baby comes in, the baby wants the mom, the baby wants to be fed, right? It wants to be nursed or have a bottle, and it grows, and then it starts to want a toy, or it wants to teeth. Like you can see this in life, and then it wants a little bit more complicated toy or something with sound, or it wants to swing, and then it wants to crawl, and the baby wants to walk. And as it progresses and goes for the next toy, it drops the lower toys. I mean, of course, there's always the blankie or the piggy or the whatever that, there's an attachment piece to. But as that child ages from being a baby to being able to run and crawl and being a toddler, then it wants, a little tricycle.
Yeah.
Right? Or it wants their own little play computer. And then it gets older and it wants a phone. It wants its own computer. It's so... Then the child grows up and goes to high school, and he or she wants a car.
Yeah.
And then they want a partner, and then they want their own children. So you see how, if you were to go into a room and see a dollhouse and there was a child playing, you might be like, okay, I'm going to sit down and play. This is cute. I want to entertain the child. And isn't this dollhouse lovely? But you would not go seeking a dollhouse at the age of 50, I hope.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, unless you're a hobbyist around that.
Yeah, that's different.
Yeah, but I just had to throw that in there. I don't know why. But yeah, you're really speaking to something really important, actually, about this conversation, which is your attitude towards it.
Yeah.
So the child and the adult, like if you're sitting down on the floor and you're playing, with the dollhouse with your kid, you and the child have a radically different disposition.
Exactly.
And both are beautiful in their own way. Like the child has just this newness and freshness, and they're in their imaginary world, and that's amazing. But they're attached to it, right? Mm-hmm. If you were to smash, I don't want to go there. Smash the dollhouse.
That would be mean.
That would be mean. Like I would never do that. Just I want to say that. Like I would never do that. But if something, let's put it this way: if something horrible happened to the dollhouse, like the child is going to be devastated.
Yeah.
Right. But the adult's going to be like, that was a bummer.
Yeah. Like the time the leg got torn off my Barbie.
Oh,
it was devastating.
Did you do that, or did somebody do that?
I forget. I don't know.
An older sibling.
I don't know.
Tell me about your childhood.
It was not pretty.
Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah.
But their disposition towards the activity is totally different. Like the child is very much in it. The adult can be in it, but they're going to stand up and walk away from it, and they're cool if they don't play with the dollhouse again.
Right.
The child is like got that, their that attachment or identity with it. So they're going to keep doing that. And that's basically what we're talking about. Like the adult does not have a value for that. So they can do the thing, but they're just not attached to it.
Right.
So it's the same way in your work, in your life, where you can do the actions and do the activities that you need to do to be successful in your business or to have a great relationship or whatever that is, but not being dependent on that for your happiness.
Right. Exactly.
And not being dependent on it turning out a certain way in order for you to be contented and peaceful in your life.
Right.
So radically different disposition.
The way to gain anything is to lose it.
Swami Ramatirtha.
Man, oh man.
It's amazing. It's highlighted in color, right?
Right.
Yeah. Remember this, where let's say you look at something that's blue, like you see that as blue, but it appears blue because it absorbs every other color and reflects blue back.
Yeah.
So it appears the color that it gives away.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Right. So the way to gain anything is to lose it. It's highlighted right there in nature. Interesting example.
And a little tip, if you're in a relationship or wanting a relationship and you've been severely attached and chasing someone, stop chasing.
Stop chasing.
Stop chasing. You have a much better chance of that person turn around being like, well, maybe.
Yeah, it's got to be done in the right way,
does.
because a lot of times people take that into the manipulative thing.
Yeah,
of like,
no game playing. Just like let the person be.
Yeah, like really just actually have respect for their choices and, send love their way and call it good, cut the cords.
So just kind of like a little wrap up here. The whole point of even pondering this thing of letting go, of renunciation, is to elevate our lives.
Yeah. Yep.
Drop something that isn't serving you, but find something that you can replace. Right. So if you're the person, you're like, man, I'm going home after work and I'm watching way too much TV. I'm eating bad food. I'm drinking more than one glass of wine at night. Where's your nearest yoga studio? What else can you do in the evening?
Right.
Drop that desire and go do something higher. And then all of a sudden you'll be like, oh my gosh, this feels great.
Right. And recognize that there's a good chance that there will be some friction when you make that transition at first. But that's the part where you kind of have to keep enrolling yourself in that higher value. So instead of turning the TV on tonight, you're going to pick up a book.
Or listen to the podcast.
Yeah, or listen to our podcast.
There's a lot of them.
So you can, continue to enroll yourself. Like the mind might still have that attraction of like, ooh, I wonder what's going on,
Right.
But in this TV show or that TV show, or, I haven't seen that one yet. But as you kind of enroll yourself into the new healthier habit, the more that you do that, the more the less that lower desire or lower attraction will have a hold on you.
Exactly. As you let it go, it lets you go as well.
Right. And there's a train of truth right there.
One example for me is like I'm getting up early. Like getting up early is really important to me. So rather than watching 2 episodes of Mad Men, which we love, it's like, okay, I'm going to watch one, go into bed. Because I know I want to get up early. It's so important to me. And so I'm dropping the desire of hanging out, watching a lot of TV because I want to go to bed and I want to get up and I want to study.
Yeah. Then that's a great example of it. And it's recognizing, I think the point that I really wanted to highlight is that there may be some friction at the front end of that. But the more that you continue to enroll yourself in that, and right. I don't know about anybody else, but I have to have that conversation with myself, like an actual enrollment conversation with myself some days where it's like, okay, dude, like it's time to get up or it's time to do this thing that I know I need to do, and to kind of like talk myself into it to make sure that I'm like really secure in that so that I can let go of some of the other.
Right.
But that's ultimately what it leads to. And it takes you higher and higher up the ladder so that you can continue to drop those lower pieces. And what happens as a result of that are some really spectacular things. Number one is your life has way more peace in it.
Oh, so much more peace. Like drop the suffering and agitation.
I mean, you think about all those little things, like, like you want this kind of car and you want this, all the.
Well, it's okay to desire those. I don't want to take away because I love teaching manifestation, but don't let your happiness depend on it.
Well, that's what I mean. Like as you detach from them, and I'm not saying like good point. Like thanks for clarifying that. But I'm not saying like don't go after those things. It's okay. But when you're attached to them,
right,
and you're involved with that whole thing, well, there's all these little desires,
right,
that you get caught up in that are just pushing and pulling you in every which way. Now, the more that you pitch up higher values of living and higher values of your life. And please, like, you don't have to adopt ours. Like, go decide for yourself what those are. We're not telling you what those are. We're just saying, there are higher values to living. Go find them for yourself. And then once you pitch those up, then you start to let go of a lot of those lower desires. And so you don't have that constant push and pull in your mind. You're actually being drawn upwards towards your highest path and purpose.
Yes.
So number one is you just have way less chatter and agitation in your head.
Yeah. Which feels so good.
Yeah. It's so much easier to function in the world. And number two is your life aligns much more congruently. We're always talking about alignment, and that's such an important piece. We're actually going to do a podcast on that too, of alignment, Swadharma, and all that stuff. And a super cool conversation. But what that does is allows more of your life to become more and more aligned with your highest path and purpose. So less pull from all these other things, more alignment, which allows you to go more quickly with less friction.
Right.
Towards that highest path. And then gradually, as you continue to enroll yourself in that path, you'll see greater and greater benefits, and you'll have more and more momentum to keep enrolling yourself, and that'll just be a continuing path of peace and prosperity and success.
Right, and I think you said it earlier, peace in action.
Peace in action. I think I said that on our walk, actually.
Yeah, we were talking about this peace in action. So you're taking action, you're in the world, you're doing your stuff, but you're so peaceful within. That is really powerful.
Right. Yeah, it's big. So to leave you with, I would just really leave you with the question of what are the higher values in your life that you probably already know what they are, right? It's not like some big secret, but like, what are those things that you can keep enrolling yourself in so that you can release a little bit of that hold of some of the lower stuff?
Right.
You know, it could,
I mean, for some people, it could be in a relationship,
sure,
getting closer to their partner, their spouse, being more attentive to their children, or being more present at work, or whatever.
More productive. Yeah. I mean, when I think about that, like one of the highest values for me is spiritual development, because I just firmly believe that that's what a human being is here to do, regardless of the results in your life. You know, that's really at the end of the day, that's really what we're here to accomplish. And so that being the higher value, it lets me kind of like continue to enroll myself in that and let go of some of the lower ones.
Yes.
But, you know, higher values like joy.
Oh, yeah.
Like joy is such a great value. If you value joy in your life, you'll find ways to create
exactly.
it.
Cheerfulness.
Yeah. In the yardsticks of spiritual growth.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk about that one in a different episode too. Absolutely. And one that I've picked up recently too is forgiveness.
Forgiveness. Yeah, you're big on forgiveness these days.
Where it's so easy to get caught in the way that I think things are supposed to be, or the way that, people are supposed to be, or whatever. And that forgiveness adds a softness and a lightness around relationships and just around your whole energy that makes everything easier.
Yeah, you were walking faster on our walk today. I was like, what's going on? You're walking fast.
I didn't notice that. I was
because he's practicing forgiveness.
Doing my thing. But yeah, that's a value that I've pitched up that is important. It's important to me, and it's something that I'm seeing and learning the value. So it's not like you just do it all in your mind. Like you pitch up a value and then go put it into practice and see for yourself, like test it out. Kisma's course is called The Science of Spirituality. That's not an accident. It's a science because it undergoes a scientific process in your life of experimentation, thought and consideration, contemplation, experimentation, and then observation of the results that it creates for you, right? And yeah, spirituality is inherently subjective, but at the end of the day, those are results that you can grab onto. So if you're not a part of that course, I
love it.
It's really like we talk about Kisma really hitting her stride with what she's here to do. Man, that's it.
I'll put the link in the show notes again.
Yeah, I'm talking a lot.
You are.
I'm going off on a tangent
because he's practicing forgiveness, so he's light. It's all good stuff. So renunciation, letting go, let go, and reach for the higher. That's really the simple equation here.
Yeah,
it's like you're walking up a ladder. You got to lift one foot off the lower rung in order to put it on the higher rung.
Exactly. Yeah. You got to grab for that higher before you can let go of the lower.
Yeah. So we'd love to hear from you. How are you? What are you letting go of? What are your questions? Please email info@sourcemovement.com. Are there little like Facebook posts under our podcast?
There are. Yeah.
Yeah. Post it under there too. That would be cool.
Yeah. Give us a comment. If you think that somebody in your life would enjoy this, please feel free to share.
Yes.
We love getting this message out there. I think you can tell that this is just something that we're so passionate about, this podcast, and we're just so excited to share with people. And if you feel like it'll benefit somebody in your life, please share it and go ahead and SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, your podcast listener of choice. You can subscribe, and you'll always be the first to get the new episodes.
Awesome.
So awesome, everybody.
Thanks for being here.
Namaste.